We're all set? On Tuesday, October 22nd. And the first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Scott, would you like to lead us? Sure. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Our first order of business is to receive the draft budget from the select board. And Rob, why don't I have you move over to the hot seat and I'll start talking and you can
They are, it is in your folders, if you, and then for the ones who needed a copy, we did print one.
All right, so I think, have you all had a chance to look at the memo?
I just
that
got
Christine
that
printed
today.
off? Okay,
So-
we'll run through it real quick. So obviously, as you know, we've been spending the past month or so working on the proposed 2025 budget. We had 5 main items we were looking at that we kind of set as priorities. Number 1 being kind of continuing the theme from last year, employee retention, attracting new employees, succession planning, maintaining the existing services we have throughout the town, and updating plans for road maintenance as well. So that kind of came in just because we've had a transition from Mark Buckland retiring as highway superintendent to Victor Greenwood, who is now our new highway superintendent. So I guess beyond that, I would open it up to you folks. Just a few things that I would point out, particularly in the nonprofit section. I know Paul has been kind of coming to our meetings all along, so this is he could probably
No,
just
go
do.
ahead and say it for everyone, yeah.
Yeah, so he could do just as good a job as presenting this as I could. Sorry, pager going off. Nonprofits. So we didn't scrutinize, we didn't adjust any of the nonprofits whatsoever. The reason being for that, with the exception is we did talk about TTCC. But you know, your typical LRVNA, Pemmy Home Health, Transport Central, all those, we didn't receive, we had some material from them, but we didn't hear from them like we were hearing from department heads. So basically we said, let's let the budget committee hear from those folks, let them present what their requests are, and let's have faith in them to make the right decision on those lines. So we did not touch them, we left them as is. So.
But
Let me rephrase it, sorry.
As is.
We level funded almost all of them from last year to this year.
Yes.
Their requests were larger, but we figured we would leave that up to the budget committee to make that decision.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
We did put in for like regional associations, we put in their accurate number or what their estimated number was, like LRPC and NHMA. Those are Lakes Region Planning and New Hampshire Municipal. And then we did put in Pemmy River Local Advisory. They asked for 350 versus 300. So those numbers were put in, but every other one was level funded except for 3 who didn't submit anything, and they were 0 because of no submission. 1 withdrew of the 3.
okay, wasn't sure. I hadn't had a chance to
Yeah.
look. Thank you.
I lost my train of thought.
Sorry, Ron.
So I will say no, thank you for pointing that out. So we didn't, you know, a lot of people say, oh, you know, what's the number? You know, what's the number we're going to stay within this year? And you really can't put 2%, 3%, 5%. I don't like to pigeonhole ourselves into doing that sort of thing. So we came to the department head, or went to the department heads and basically said, hey, needs, not wants. You know, we had a pretty drastic increase in the budget last year just to accomplish what we were trying to accomplish as far as employee retention and recruitment. Some of that carries over to this year as well. So that, you know, we asked all the department heads to present a budget with that in mind and not be, you know, basically be coming to us with what you need, not what you want. So I think all the department heads did a pretty good job of that. I think we might have made some minor cuts in some areas. But ultimately, we've kind of passed things off to you folks. What I will say is what we're presenting to you is, at least in my mind, I think what the most reasonable we could come up with without having to hinder services within town. I think as far as what you folks could come up with to could you come up with some cuts and make some major cuts and decrease the tax rate? You sure could, absolutely. But you're going to impact the services that the townspeople are used to and what they're getting now. We as a community are every year growing more and more. It seems like it's not going to stop, and the demand on services every year are higher and higher, and we particularly see that within our emergency services. And we're also seeing with it on our roads as well. As we have areas in town that previously didn't see a lot of road traffic, that those roads are taking a lot harder than they used to because people have expanded into those areas and are trying to develop areas for whether it be residential or we even had a proposal for a business to go into town to an area which saw little to no traffic that potentially wanted to put it into the med space at the end of that road, which would have been a major impact on that road. And nope. Those are the type of things that continue to impact us more and more, and the cost for services in town. So I hope you folks. Obviously, you have Les on the board. You're in good hands as far as a liaison between us and the board, and we look forward to working with you on any questions you have throughout the process. Walter.
I've got one thing to say, not a question. In the past, I've had a lot of trouble with Lakes Region Visiting Nurse Association. The letters that I wrote and the things that I said seem to have had a very good effect on them. It's fired 2 managers and it's brought in some very competent people.
Good. Not good that
And
they're
this
fired.
town needs the services for senior citizens badly. And I would suggest we more than level fund Lakes Region Visiting Nurse this time, because the population's getting older, the need is greater, and they're the best we got.
Thank you, Walter. We will take that up at a future meeting.
Well, I think it was important to tell the select.
Yep.
that
I appreciate you saying that, because that's one thing that kind of stuck in my head when we started talking about that was your previous experiences, and should we be continuing to give these organizations that much money when we're not receiving the services in return that we expect? So certainly good to hear some feedback on that. So
Gail Shaw was here too and said how many things that they're doing with the senior center now that hadn't been being done for a while. So I think we're getting back to the level of service we had
yep.
back when we fully
Excellent.
funded.
I don't think we'll ever have as good as what we had with now.
No.
Yeah.
I'm so ashamed of myself not for doing more and not for screaming louder, but I just never realized how bad it was.
Yeah. So, on the revenue side of things, I think we're still kind of early in the season to be able to see where we're truly at on that, but everything seems to be on pace to where we should be as far as where we were last year, and we do not expect, but anticipate some possible increases in some areas. So I think we're in pretty good shape there. So the one thing that we most likely won't see this year that I would have liked to have seen would be the proceeds of the sale of 85 Lake Street going back into the general fund this year. At this point, I don't know if how up on it you folks are, but we basically have to go and hold 2 public hearings before we can actually sell the building. So that's going to put us in that probably December time range before we can even do a bid process, which whether it goes out to sealed bid or if it goes to actual live auction, which is one thing we've discussed doing. I don't anticipate we'd see those funds until after the first of the year, unfortunately, so.
That's sad. I'm sad to see that lost. And everyone knows what I said, and it's not gonna change anything, but I don't think the way it's going is fair to seniors.
We certainly took all that into consideration, and unfortunately that decision was based, pretty much, I can't speak for everyone on the board, but more from a cost standpoint, or mostly from a financial standpoint, rather than, a need standpoint. And, one of the things we've looked at, I can personally, not we, but I can personally say is I know the community center is, and Les can probably speak more on it, but I think the community center is looking to, expand some down the road with their programs as well. So I'm, and that gives me peace of mind in making that decision. And, for me, it was knowing that, in my vote for the building was knowing that building and how much work really needed to go into it, and how much it was going to truly cost the town to upkeep and maintain that building, and even make it a workable space. So, and unfortunately, we're also under somewhat of a short period of time to decide what we were going to do with that building, but at the same time, it wasn't a secret that something was going to have to be done with that building when we started the process a few years ago. And it's not like we had somebody coming to us with a plan saying, hey, here's what we want to do, here's what it's going to cost you, here's what we're going to expend. We had nothing, and we basically had to make a decision based on that. So, do you folks have any questions for me on the?
I heard you describe this at the select board meeting, but I'd like you to talk a little bit for the other folks in the room, you know what's going on, about the salaries and the normal step increase and then the adjustment to the scale and how that shows up in the budget.
Yes.
Could you do that?
I can if you want.
You would, Christina would actually probably, it would make more sense coming from Christina. How's that sound?
So as you're looking at the budget, if you look in the department head budget, there are two things in the department head budget. This year, the increases let me take a step back. This year, we decided to put all of the increases back into the individual departments. We thought it was cleaner and more transparent to do that and not to lump it all into one sum in the personnel budget. So the select board voted on some budget transfers and we've moved that money already. So when you look at the personnel budget, you're gonna see that line. I think there's a little bit of money left in it that will go back to the general fund, but you're gonna see the majority of that line is gone and we've moved it into individual budgets. We just felt it was cleaner to have those increases. It was very hard to explain the increases that are in the budget for next year aren't they were already approved this year. Every time we had to explain that, so that's why we were trying to move them back, partly. The second part of that is that unfortunately when we did the increases for this year, not unfortunately, but because it's not a full year, we have to budget those increases for next year at a full year. So there's already a % increase attributed just to budgeting those lines at a full year's rate. And then what the board, so you'll see that represented in the department head submission. And then what the board had decided was that we were going to support step increases. Step increases are 30% increases, moving someone from one step to another on the grade that they're in. And those step increases are to continue to support and keep our employees where they should be on the grade scale that we've adopted. So those two things are included in the department budget. When you go to the select board budget, there's a 1% adjustment to the wage scale. It's a COLA adjustment to adjust the whole wage scale by 1%, and we added that into the select board budget.
Yeah. And that, we made that decision on the one, so basically we had to make a decision whether, okay, we happy with what we've done and we're gonna you know, take a year off from maintaining the scale? Or are we gonna continue to maintain the scale and not fall behind as we have in years past? And we made the decision with that 1% that let's go ahead and start maintaining the scale now, so we don't put ourselves in this position 5-10 years down the road where we have to come up with this big chunk of money again. So that's where that 1% falls into. So another thing you folks will see, Christina was talking about some consolidation. There's a lot of areas in the budget where you'll see, for instance, I know PD and Fire have done it. They've taken their vehicle maintenance lines, rather than having each truck broken out, they've broken that down into one line for you. So you're seeing one lump sum in there and not 8 different lines for 8 different pieces of equipment. So
See the 8 different lines for another year at least, but you won't see budgets in those 8 different lines.
You need to see the 8 lines
Yeah.
continuing, because when you want to compare to past years, they exist in past years' budgets. But instead of budgeting money for every piece of equipment the town owns, we're going to budget for maintenance for a department's collection of equipment
Yeah.
in line in each department.
And the PD had done that last year, or the year before, they had already done it. But, so we agreed to try and start streamlining and making it more consistent across the board, and we did it with highway and fire this year. So you'll see in fire a bunch of 0 budgets, but you'll see the main line says vehicle maintenance at the top, and I tried to put notes marking both back and forth so everybody would know. But you'll see that probably one more year after this year, and then you won't see it again, so. We tried to clean some lines up. We're working slowly to making lines be similar in each budget. We had started that process when Bob was here, and we're slowly working towards that. So you'll see some things that say we transferred to this line, or, and we put those notes on it. And at the request of a select board member, we added 2020, in the document you're looking at, you'll see 2023 budget, 2023 actual, 2024 budget, 2024 actual, and then you'll see department head, select board, and the percent increase is based off of the select board number. So it gave you a couple of years of history that you couldn't see last year when we were going through this process. I could tell you it, but you can see at least a couple of years of history now that you couldn't see before, so. We haven't figured out how to change the size of the paper yet. I don't think, so once we figure that out, we'll be able to possibly expand on that in the future, but right now it won't allow you to change it, so.
Gotcha.
there was one area, I know that this just comes to mind because we discussed it the other night. So one area we talked about increasing was in the select boards. I can't remember the line,
It's
how it's described.
select board town administrator expenses.
Yep.
4130, 690, I think.
So we had talked about, so the question came up, should the select board get an increase in our compensation?
That was your line too.
And most of us, if not all of us, were not comfortable giving ourselves a raise. So we said, hey, rather than give ourselves a raise, let's give ourselves the ability to expend funds that to the benefit of, the volunteers of the town and the people of the town. For instance, we put on the volunteer appreciation night, things like that. So election day, I know like the last election, I think Rayma and Cheryl bought coffee, and Ned bought lunch, and then the select board bought dinner. And I said, hey, let's have a fun. So we can actually say, hey, let's do this for these people that are doing X, Y, and Z for us. So rather than give ourselves a raise, we did that. So basically, kind of gave ourselves a raise because maybe not as much money coming out of our pockets, but so we did do that. The only other thing I can think of,
I'm trying to think.
we did eliminate.
Can I-
So forestry is no longer a department, but it still shows up in the budget.
I was gonna ask you, I know this is old news, but not everyone is completely up to date. So do you want to touch on the fact that with Mark's retirement, you've changed the structure Now have two departments instead of one?
Oh, yes, that's an excellent point. So it wasn't so much with Mark's retirement, but we did make the decision to separate solid waste and highway department into two different departments. So historically, the highway department's always overseen solid waste. So Chuck Cullen, who has been our lead attendant for the past year or so,
Just about a year,
accepted his position as a part-time department head. I think, what are we officially calling him now?
Transfer station supervisor.
Transfer station superintendent,
Supervisor.
our supervisor. So Chuck is overseeing that entire department. He is taking over the budgeting process with the assistance of Christina, as well as Victor, who's been a huge help in that transition as well. So it frees the highway department up to worry about their side of the world and focus on the many projects that they have to do without having to worry about what's going on over there on a daily basis. There are still some things that kind of have to work in harmony as they're on the same property and share some of the same equipment. But one thing we did do, the highway department received a new 1-ton truck 2 months ago now. So the old one, rather than trade it in, or sell it, which it had very little value, we actually gave that to the to solid waste, and they have the ability now to actually go and pick up some of the trash from the receptacles around town during the summer season, Kelly Park, that sort of thing. You know, rather than have these guys that were paying $30, $35 an hour on the highway department that could be out working on highway department projects, taking care of that when we do have, the bandwidth to now do that at solid waste. So.
And then the other structural change is that with the new public safety, I won't ask you about that myself, but with the new public safety building, in the past, the fire department owned the fire station, so all the cost of operating the fire station was in the fire department's budget, and the police department owned the police station, and all the cost of running the police station was in the police budget.
Go ahead.
But now there is a new section for the public safety building, because it's both, it's not one.
So in
But
your,
you explain it
I
better,
was gonna
please.
say, in your 2024 budget, those shared costs, we tried to put them in general government at the time. And we got thinking about it, that it really shouldn't be in general government. Those shared costs for public safety should be tied with police and fire. So when you go to the police and fire budgets, there's a new category, 4,200, called public safety,
Mhm.
and those are the shared costs of police and fires. I think there are 5 lines: custodial, building maintenance, bathroom supplies,
Yeah.
electric and heating. Thank you. So there are 5 lines there, so it'll start with 4,200 for public safety building shared costs. Then it goes to the police department, and then it goes to the fire department, so it's all together a group.
It's still a public safety section of but it's not, the fire department doesn't have, or the police department don't take responsibility for the shared,
Right.
that now has its own section for that shared cost.
And all those lines that were in their fire or police budgets have been zeroed out, or it's just the bathroom supplies was removed as shared costs from their budgets. But as far as employee staffing increases, we only we are proposing a half a person in the executive department, technically half a person. It's a 20-hour position being moved to a full-time position, and then an additional 10 hours in the fire department for moving the welfare slash fire person to full-time at the fire. She was full-time before, but we're taking welfare out of her and putting her the extra 10 hours to the fire department.
We're seeing kind of not seeing, but we're basically are having a change of duties somewhat in the executive office with the resignation of the previous finance and HR person. We've hired a dedicated finance person, and we have an open position for human resources. So we were very lucky. We found someone for finance right away who we had
Sorry, Carol.
happened to have in-house, and she has worked out spectacularly. Filling the HR position has been a little more challenging as far as finding a candidate that we're interested in hiring. So we're still working on that. So what Christina is referring to is we do have a person who's moving in. Basically, is the minute taker. So she's already has hours on the books.
Let's not get into detail of personnel things and.
No, I'm not going to
Okay.
names. No. So she's already performing a function in that office as a minute taker and such, but she's going to be given other duties in that office to free up Christina and Lindsay. Lindsay is the finance officer. And then at some point, somehow that welfare position is going to be worked in within those 4 or 5 positions in that office. So that's where welfare is going to be taken over. So that's not going to go out as an open position. So, and then as she mentioned, the fire department's administrative assistant has now gone to full time
She was full-time, but full-time at
or
fire.
gone to full-time hours strictly at fire. Just the, again, increase in demand of services and the money that she brings in that role more than justifies having her in that position full-time, strictly there at the fire department without being distracted to have to go do something else 10 days or 10 hours a week.
So those are the only positions that have been added. We have some open positions, and we do anticipate we're filling them.
Yep.
It's, we anticipate they'll be filled before the end of the year, hopefully, fingers crossed.
Right, but we're not creating new
No,
positions.
no,
We're
just that.
filling open
Right.
positions.
Yep.
We worked really hard. I was afraid to even ask these guys. So, but we worked really hard not to add, but we definitely needed the additional hours. So,
We needed more than that.
yeah.
We settled
that-
for that.
But we were good with asking for this because we can take a look and see where we're at now.
One other quick thing I'll add, just kind of going back to public safety building as well as 85 Lake Street. Unfortunately, we're going to have to heat that building for a couple months longer than we were thinking we're going to have to. So there is additional money. What line is that in again?
General government, we added it in with the general government, 4194.
Okay.
We added it in with the heating, general government pays for heating for this building, the old town hall, so we added a little bit extra in that line to pay for the 85 Lake Street until we sell it. And we added it into electricity, which I know is 4194, 410. So that pays for this building and various buildings for electricity and for that building for a little bit longer. We're hoping, fingers crossed, we sell it in January at the latest. So, well, I lied. They haven't taken a vote yet. I can't say that out loud.
So just for informational purposes, so you folks are aware, I know Paul's aware, we have still not received the tax impact from the school, from the SAU, due to a security breach in their computer system. I guess that's the best way to.
So they also lost so the security breach over the summer, but they also lost their main finance person.
Yep.
She retired and left.
The business
The
administrator.
business
Yeah.
administrator, yeah.
So it's delayed, so that's causing us a delay in setting the tax rate, which causes a delay in collecting the taxes, which causes a potential shortfall with the town paying its bills. So that said, there is the likelihood out there that we will be taking a TAN this year. Which, Dawn, did you do the math on what that?
Yeah, Dawn and I
Yeah,
did.
Christina and I did.
Yeah, what was that number again?
We figured a couple months, it was
I think we
18.
did 20,000 in the line.
18?
Yeah.
Did we? Well.
I thought it was 18, somewhere around.
Yeah, never mind. I'm mixing it up with the other interest. So yes, I think it was 18.
And that was kind of looking forward to potentially running into the same situation in the spring as well, correct?
Possibly,
Yeah.
yeah.
Most likely, I think we're pretty good about getting through the spring.
Yeah.
But most like next fall is
Oh,
an
next fall.
evaluation
Okay.
year. So we are going to be late next year as well on setting a tax rate because the revaluation doesn't get finalized and into the town until close to November, which means we're gonna be late filing taxes again, so one more year, so.
Yeah, section 4723, 18,000.
Okay, good. I was mixing it with the, Central Street.
20 is our Central Street project.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
So that is something that we'll definitely talk about. I have been sitting through select board meetings, so I'm aware of this. I have some thoughts, but I don't want to get into details tonight. I'd rather do that when we go over that detailed section with long-term debt and interest and TAN, and that's one of our meetings.
Yeah.
So we are pursuing a TAN now.
Yep.
So we haven't closed on a TAN yet. We're not there. There's many steps you have to go through before you can get there, but we are moving towards it, so,
And that'll be a figure set by the town's attorney.
yes.
So,
That's my understanding.
yeah.
I think other than budgeting money to pay the interest on a TAN in future years, we can all be concerned, but the budget committee doesn't really have authority or responsibility.
Yeah.
So,
No, but it's something you should be,
we
certainly be
should-
aware of.
Well,
and-
you should be, yeah, because we did have to increase the budget from 1,500 to 18,000.
Yeah.
1,500 is, I'm not sure wherever that number came from over the years. There's no way it was paying for any interest
I
on
will
any
share
TAN.
with the other committee members when our finance officer Lindsay complained to me about who came up with this silly number. I said, well, we just approved what was asked for. It's not my fault.
So it was before me. I should start no, I can't, never mind. I was just gonna do the BC, but it was coming up with the, never mind. It's on public TV.
Any questions I can answer for you folks while I'm sitting here? Before Dawn gets on the hot seat?
I guess the one question that I would ask, just you put again on the priorities again, the fifth item on road maintenance. Because this was talked a little bit about last year. I know Sean had some strong feelings that we could do things differently and better, but I don't think we ever had it. You guys
So,
never came up with a detailed plan.
thank
Are we
you.
kind of in the same place? Do you have a detailed plan, or are you intending to
Yes and no.
work on creating one?
So thank you for bringing that up, because that's actually something I meant to bring up and talk to you about. So as I was saying earlier with the transition from Mark to Victor, one of the things that I in particular said is I want to relook at our maintenance plans, particularly paving, because paving kind of drives everything. And paving drives drainage and the overall, because obviously you don't want to pave the road and then take on drainage projects on that road. So I think Victor I know he has a lot of great ideas in his head, and I know he has a lot of great ideas written down. We just haven't had a chance to sit down with him and plan that. I know in particular he has a lot of, he's put a lot of thought into the subsurface projects, meaning the drainage and that sort of thing, prior to the roads actually being resurfaced, and whether they're ground or they're, can't remember the other word. Or they're just top coated.
Okay.
Where we come in is going to be more of a sitting down with Christina, Victor. Let's look at the priority list. We've had some informal discussions, particularly paving this year. So we actually cut paving by $50,000. And the reason being for that is we're trying to look at our priorities and what's going to get us the most bang for the buck. And right now what we're looking at is top coating Bristol Hill, because we don't want that to go another year, because eventually it's going to, what has been done is not going to hold up if it's not top coated. So I think we were looking at top coating Bristol Hill and then paving Harriet,
Ernest and Jonelle.
potentially Harriet, Ernest, and Janelle, depending on the pricing of it. So what we were looking at doing is how can we best use that $300,000 for this year? And that's kind of what it came out to, or how can we best use the $350,000? And it's like, well, we got this other 50, which we're not gonna move equipment and go start paving somewhere else for $50,000. So let's take that 50 off for this year. We're in a year, we're trying to tighten the purse strings. There is another line in there, separate line for drainage now.
Yep, it's guardrail projects too.
Drainage and guardrail projects, because we do have both of those issues that we need to deal with this, in the immediate future. So there's no longer money in the line for chip sealing. That is Victor, with my 1,000% support, does not believe that chip sealing is an effective method to road maintenance and preservation. So I don't think you're going to see money in that line as long as he's here. That'll be reflected in the paving budget. So.
Okay.
And he was good. Smith River was one that they had planned for chip sealing, but
Oh,
Yep.
top coat.
top coat and, right.
But it was originally anticipated
Yes.
to chip seal that.
And he did not want to go
Yeah.
that way, and that was his final priority. It wasn't
Yep.
a priority that had to be done this year.
So Smith River will be a
26.
2026 priority. Yeah.
Chip
Okay.
seal was really just to try and catch up, because we were so far behind on our quote 10-year plan.
Yeah.
That was just to try to catch up, and it helped get us to where we are now.
Yeah.
But it's nothing to use
Yeah.
going forward.
God help them. God help a motorcyclist if they go down on it.
Don't go on, don't go on. anymore.
Historically, we've always gone to the highway budget when we had to make some major cuts.
Yeah.
So that has definitely hurt us over the years.
Yeah, and that's what the chip seal was trying to catch up on, all those cuts that were made, just to Band-Aid a few roads to get us, and now the select board, I think, is correcting, let's do it right from here on out,
Well,
since we're caught.
thank you, that helps. Victor and Chuck did come to the meeting with Mark last year, so we've met them, and I've said hello to Victor a couple of times, but
Yep.
I've never had a detailed discussion with him, so look forward to that. But again, I was just trying to make sure we understand what your policies and priorities are to try to keep the budget aligned with that. So it sounds like what you're saying is Victor's got a good plan, so when we talk,
He does,
we'll
yeah.
get the details.
Yeah, and that's just kind of on that. That makes me think of one more thing. We did increase his overtime budget this year from what he had proposed, so that might be reflected.
It's in the select.
It
board.
might be reflected as an increase in the select board. So that just one thing that we had thought of is, when you're talking about your overtime budget, is you need to take into consideration any increases from the previous year. In addition to what your projected need for overtime is. So there is, I can't remember what the figure is off the top of my head, but you will see that is reflected in his overtime budget as well. So, and I.
Part of that was also based on the Central Street project possibly starting.
Yes,
Which
yeah.
would cause more impact on the overtime for the.
I would say, I'm sorry, Walter, go ahead.
I just want to say, I'm so thrilled with the job that Mark and the Highway Department did on my road, and the number of people that are using my road recreationally has many times more than what it was. Quadruple isn't enough. It's many more times. And the kids that play on it, it's such a thrill to see them out there, and it's a better surface for them to play on. I think Mark deserves an awful lot of credit for the time he spent letting people know what was happening and letting you do things before you. He had to do his part.
Yep.
I'm thrilled with Mark. I am.
Yep. No, we're certainly appreciative of the service Mark provided to the town for many 30 years, I believe, or over 30 years. So yeah. So.
And happy for him to go into a retirement for himself.
Yep. And happy for him. Yep. So and also confident in that Victor can carry the torch on that. So we're pretty lucky to have. What we have in all, really in all our departments in town, and the performance we get out of all of them. So,
Yeah, I think the budget committee is going to be impressed seeing Victor present. It's his first
Definitely.
year, he's very enthusiastic.
Yep.
But when he presented to the select board, he did his homework, he had backup, He'll give a very good,
Yeah, very
very good
organized.
presentation to you,
Yep.
you'll be impressed.
He's in January. Don't forget, you have to come.
I do?
Because I won't be here.
Oh, okay.
Please.
So I don't have any questions. Buzz or Walter, questions, anything?
No, I'll learn more when discussed.
We'll get into the details
The
more.
things change so hard, it makes it
Yep.
kind of
Yeah.
something you gotta look into.
And Les works as the bridge. So anything we do, she'll keep you informed
Yep.
of, and hopefully the other way also. And I don't think we're gonna do anything significant. If we do, we'll give you a heads up and invite you to,
Yeah.
come here and be part of that. But we don't typically, at least not while I've been doing this, tried to make a drastic change in the intent of the town's direction
Sure.
by changing the budget.
Yeah, and I don't, you know, as far as, obviously it's too early to discuss warrant articles, but I mean, we'll have a conversation about that down the road with
Yes.
you folks, so. I don't think, what are you laughing at?
No big surprises.
There's
I don't foresee any surprises, that's,
potentially one, but we haven't confirmed it yet, so we should wait until the board's talked about it.
yes, okay. I'm not sure what
But
she's talking
nothing-
about, but it makes me nervous.
We'll find out in the future.
So nothing major, I think
Yeah.
it's just the standard stuff, but on the capital reserve questions, but the fire
Yeah.
department may have an additional one.
Yes, which is not
It's not set.
super impactful, so,
Yeah.
yeah. Yep. You guys have anything to
The
add?
cemetery trustees will have some, but it won't, those are just that we're required to put them on there, so it's not
Yeah.
impactful for tax rate either, so.
So the only thing I think I have to say is, some of the restructuring in the lines in the budget were meant to make things simpler,
Yep.
tracking wise, and be transparent at the same time. And just make finance right, we have a new finance officer, and working with the TA, and just making everything streamlined, more efficient down the road, and again, transparent.
Yes, and publicly, thank you to Christina, and unfortunately Lindsay's not here, but they have put in an exorbitant amount of work, particularly over the past couple of weeks, partially because of me. But, you know, having sat in the same chairs you guys have sat in, I'm a numbers guy, I like to see trends, and I couldn't see those trends on the current budget, so this is at least a step in the right direction with that, so.
Sean's here to present the budget.
I know.
I was gonna say, why did I show up? The mayor's here.
There's one thing on the formatting I forgot to tell you, so you see a warrant article and a number. And that keeps those three budgets, the towns, the water and sewer budgets together, and that's the only way we can keep them together to print out for you and include all the totals. Once all the warrant articles are signed, we'll fix the warrant article number that's there, we just threw that number in to keep them together for you, so.
Okay. I think, thank you. I think that was
All
good.
right. Turn it over to Don.
Friday. I think there's only surgery on Friday.
So we're done with the, I guess I should start running the meeting again. So that was our receiving the budget. The second item on the new business agenda is the presentation of the capital improvements program.
Excuse me.
I think you should be talking about the budget forever. He came for the good part. You got here for the
CIP
good
committee.
part.
So Mr. Milbrand, if you would take the seat.
Yeah, I'll take the hot
Give us-
seat. I'll
Give
tell
us
ya.
the update.
Can I get rid of the mic? I really don't need one.
No, we need the mic because there might be people
Yeah, I know.
watching us.
All right.
Probably hundreds of people watching.
Oh, everybody's tuning in right now for this exciting event. All right, thank you. I'm the chairman of the CIP committee this year. Just two other members here as well.
Yeah.
Just a quick overview. CIP committee is Capital Improvements Committee. Capital Improvements Program Committee. And it's a subcommittee of the planning board. There's all kinds of RSAs, things like that. RSA 32 basically describes what it is. In a nutshell, it's a committee that tries to plan out all the capital expenditures for the town. And we do a look 10-year out. We also look a little bit in the history. And the main goal is to make it that you're not spending, $1 million one year, nothing the next year, and $500,000, and your tax rate's going up and down all over the place. Basically trying to take those very large expenditures and even them out over the years. The definition of a capital expenditure is something that is going to be at least 3 years of useful life and over $10,000 in expense, and those are the kind of things. So typically it's major equipment and vehicle purchases. The way we convey it, there's two pieces of paper, or two different items that we use. There's a narrative which gives a little bit more in-depth description of where the committee's thoughts were in presenting the plan itself. The plan itself has been traditionally given as a spreadsheet, which you all will have a copy of. It's we've broken it down into different departments. I can go over a little bit of what we've done for this year. As you'll see, there is 10 years out, and there's also 2 years past expenditures on it. For the police department, we've come into a pattern of the chief has one vehicle a year replacement. So you'll see that it goes all through the various years. 2025 is showing that vehicle 2 is due for replacement. We've recently, last year and this year, because of the inflation that everybody has seen, we've tried to go through and update the numbers. So if you would look from past years, the numbers that you're seeing now are increased from that, trying to anticipate what the increase in vehicles are. As everybody knows, vehicle prices have gone way up, unfortunately. We're projecting for 2025, $73,000 for a cruiser. You'll also see in this that we have a cruiser capital reserve fund. Now the reason, over the years we've worked into our goal of getting everything evened out. The main tool for that is to come up with capital reserve funds for each of the departments. That way you can give a steady amount every year and have enough for the purchase of the vehicle. The nice thing about that is, rather than an appropriation for a vehicle that you have to spend within that year, if you put it into a capital reserve fund, then if the vehicle doesn't need replaced for another half a year or something like that, you can stretch it out. Police department hasn't really done that much, but the highway department has been able to do that on several of their trucks and actually save the town quite a bit of money in that respect. You'll see that only $65,000 we're projecting to go into the capital reserve fund this year. Part of that is there's offsetting revenues. There's some money left in that reserve, plus we're anticipating some money out of the police detail fund that we can use, so that if we deposit $65,000 into that fund, we'll still have enough with the other sources of revenue to still be able to pay for a $73,000 cruiser. The up and down on the spreadsheet can get a little confusing. It was created by an accountant, so I will not mention her name, although I respect her dearly. It was a previous town manager.
I'm gonna text her.
Yeah, you can. It was a lot more confusing. I have made it a little bit better, I will say. Also in the police, you'll see that there's an $8,000 radar units. Last year there was a $32,000 there's also grants and offsetting this. It's not, we'll be spending that, but there's a section down farther. I hate to bounce you around. The very last section is offsetting revenues, and you'll see the grant monies for that. What the police chief has come with us is, last year they bought a new radar trailer. That's why the number was so much higher. This year and next year, they're looking at replacing the radar units in the vehicles. So they're much less costly than a trailer, which is why the 8,000, and he's expecting a 3/4 or 75% offsetting grant. So there's 6,000 offsetting that. Sorry if I'm moving too quick, sorry, but I'm sure this is not the most exciting stuff. Moving down to Public Works, there's a vehicle, F-550 Truck 2 has been in a few accidents. It is ready for being replaced. You'll see the $160,000 estimate on it. We're also planning for $160,000 into the capital reserve on that. It seems a little silly, but that's just to keep the capital reserve from being depleted too much, because although the next 2 years there's no replacements, farther out there are several replacements that'll be rather expensive. So if you put a moderate amount every year, then when $300,000 bill comes along, you have the money for it. The chair of the select board already went over the paving line, where when the CIP committee was meeting with the department head, we were looking at $350,000, and that has already been changed. And with that note, the CIP is an advisory mechanism that we lay this out, and then it's up to the select board and then ultimately to the budget committee to decide what the final number should be.
Right, anything that's funded through the budget is our responsibility. Anything that's funded through a separate warrant article is the select board's responsibility.
Right. And this piece of paper is just giving you a good starting point, if you will. Moving on to fire department, we have slated $135,000 to go into the capital reserve. Part of that large increase is the fact that equipment is getting much more expensive, and to catch up, we've had to make some increases there. We maybe were expecting a $600,000 replacement cost. Now it's $900,000. So to catch that up over a couple of years, you need to plan accordingly. The other line there is the SCBA equipment. The compressor was actually also due this year, but there again, the nice thing about having capital reserves is the fire chief said that the compressor is actually in good shape. It can be pushed out at least another year. You may see that pushed out further if it continues to be in good serviceable order. The SCBA is the self-contained breathing apparatus. It's the, Scott Pax is the more typical name for it, and they have a certain life, and they are due for replacement. Obviously, that's something that's a very important piece of safety equipment that needs to be replaced. The current ones were bought under a grant a number of years ago, and they've reached the end of their life, and that's where the $84,000 comes from that. So we sort of missed synchronization for the show for the parks. Expecting the next year, starting next year, we're going to be better coordinate with them. I actually skipped the line there too, so you won't see anything for park improvements, but expect going forward, we are going to work with them better. I'll move back real quick to the town building maintenance fund, and you'll see that over the second column, there's $86,769 in that fund presently. There are expenditures this year that will probably bring that down to $50,000. And the goal for that fund was to basically fund it and keep it at about $50,000. So since it'll be at $50,000 at the end of the year, the committee has decided that there's no need to put additional money into it because it's at the goal. The $10,000 going out into the future is just a guess. It's more or less a placeholder. So that you can see some of the totals, and it looks a little bit intimidating when you see total capital spending of over $1 million. However, when you see there's offsetting revenues, which is tabulated down lower, and the actual projected expenditures is only $683,000 for capital items. The second page on this shows the other thing we always collect is the interest payments, principal and interest of long-term debt, because that is part of capital expenditures from the past. And then there's a section on the offsetting revenues, which I talked about. And the quote bottom line is actually the next to the bottom line is the one that you really want, is where the capital improvements goal is shown, projected portion of tax rate. And this is based on a projected valuation of the town. But if you'll see, in 2023 it was just under $2. Last year it was $2.05. This year it does take a jump to $2.24. But then moving out it's $2.25, $2.24, and then has some step increases mainly because of our changes for inflation. And the big jump is basically due to inflation. And the other steps as you go along are mainly because of our anticipation of inflated costs of equipment. Questions? after I
Being a member of your committee, you don't
blast
have any
through.
questions, because I've sat through all this a number of times. Les or Walter, any questions?
I think it is kind of exciting because it's showing that we're thinking forward and covering ourselves expense-wise into the future.
I think planning ahead makes sense. Like you said, you don't want to see the spending jump erratically from year to year, up and down, so that it yeah, so.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the committee. There was a lot of good thought and input that we talked about for some of these lines as a committee, especially in trying to get the crystal ball out and figure out what's going to happen in the future. Nobody knows what's going to happen there. So the committee, I think, it's a good committee, and they've done a great job in preparing this. So that's our advice. Take it as you will.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
I'll just remind the committee that anything in the capital plan that is going to be funded through the budget will be included in some department budget, and we will go over that in detail on the appropriate day.
Yep.
So.
All right.
Anything
Thank you.
else? Any other questions before we let Don step away? Thank you, Don. I think that was great. Thanks.
He's going to run quick before we can ask any questions.
All right, I think we're pretty close. We'll run through the rest of the agenda. Our next item is to consider or to approve the minutes of our previous meeting on October 8th. Does, can I get a motion to do so? Walter will make a motion to approve the minutes from the October 8th meeting. We're going to change them, I know, but we need to.
Well, there's no one here to take the comments.
I'll second it.
Yeah, we do.
It's live.
It's getting
All right.
recorded, yes. And, okay, so I have a motion from Walter, seconded by Les, to approve the minutes. Do we have any corrections or adjustments? I expect we do. Please, go ahead, Les.
On the second page, first paragraph, down at the bottom, it's 2 lines up or 3 lines up, it says 252, and then parentheses 252 Bristol residents.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
I see.
My
Council has
phone's going
provided
off.
services to
Yeah, no,
252.
I thought I turned it down, I'm so sorry.
What do you,
I'm like, why am I hearing something like a minor noise? My phone was
all
going
right.
off, so
I
sorry.
can't hear it, so that's okay.
Okay, so, yep.
Are you calling up the minutes on the screen?
I can call them up here, yep.
I have them on my screen
I
here.
have them on my
but-
screen.
So someone's, okay, so after the word residence, there should be a period and then a capital T on 30, because it's two sentences run together.
Thank you. Got it.
In the next paragraph, about halfway down, there's a line that begins with the word organization. And organization,
Yeah, the sentence doesn't begin, but the line begins. I got it.
yeah, organization and after the word and, you should put in the word it.
Okay.
Now, the next paragraph, three lines down, where it says nonprofit 5013C, it should be 501, parentheses, little c, close parentheses, and another parentheses, the number 3, close parentheses. It's 501C3.
Rather than 503C with no
Right,
parentheses.
and then-
Yes, yes, that's a legal thing. That's your expertise, so thank you.
And then, a little more than halfway down, the line begins times a year.
Mhm.
Mrs. Carpenter stated reads for the Lambert. After it says purchased and this just,
Yeah, that's not good
this
grammar.
whole thing just didn't make sense. So after the word and, the club, insert the club, capital C, also donates, and to strike the word fundraise.
Also donates money from plant sales.
And then strike sales to, and then strike donate to.
Donates money from plant sales to the TTCC scholarship program.
Yep.
Okay.
It didn't make sense before, at least it
I
didn't.
actually saw that one, but I figured you'd be all over it, so I didn't do anything with it.
And the next one, the next section, in the third line under the caption, the line begins with the date 2021. And I had to go back and look at the notes to see what the person said, but I think what she said was that they've been working on their how they calculate each town's apportionment,
Okay,
and so.
because that's what it ends with. Fair
Right, and
reputable-
this thing wasn't a sentence, it didn't, it just, if you read it, it did. So after it's 2021 Tri-County Caps goal, and then insert has been, strike in the methodology,
Okay. Tri-County CAPS goal has been to streamline requests.
no, insert, after streamline, insert the word the,
To streamline the requests.
and it request singular,
Okay.
and then after the word request, insert methodology so as to.
And get rid of the comma. So as to provide all the municipalities.
And then the word "we" at the end should be it. Because we, it's the committee that's making, so we're not it, it's them, so it should.
Provide all the municipalities it serves
Serves, add an
Which
S
is
to
plural,
serves, yep.
with a standard
Yeah.
formula that is consistent, fair, and equitable.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Moving on.
I was hopeful, but I didn't think you were done.
Well, there's,
Go ahead, keep going.
these are long minutes.
Yes, they are.
I was gonna, actually, I'll make the comment now. I thought we discussed this last year about that we didn't really need to, since the letters are attached as exhibits or appear somewhere, that we didn't really need to get into all of this stuff. But I went through it and I'm ambivalent one way or the other, but a lot of this is just taken verbatim out of the request letters.
Right.
So,
We don't attach the
We don't?
response letters to this unless you
but they
ask.
weren't they attached to the agenda?
They're sent to you
No.
as materials for your meeting.
Oh, for us,
Yeah.
so they're not
They're
public.
not part of the
But if-
Well, then I
public.
strike the comment.
So my question would be though, if that's something you want to incorporate into your minutes, those can be done, we can attach them, it's just, there's an awful lot of information in those to be attached to your minutes, so it's up.
I was just trying to
Okay.
save secretarial work. but-
Yeah,
Because this is a
no.
this is a lot of work for, but let's just proceed. At the top of the third page, the second line down says the diaper program, and there's a comma which should be deleted after program.
Oh, yeah, there's only two things, so
Right.
there's no comma.
Right, and then, the second sentence, Mrs. Smallwood stated TRICAP assisted 273 families in Bristol, and then it says at 10% of the town. I didn't know what that was.
I think she's saying there are 3,000 people in the town, 273 is about 10% of our population.
Yeah.
It might not be,
Well, then
Written-
the word at should be or about 10% of the time.
I think that's a good correction. That's your understanding too?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, and then 3 lines up from the end of that paragraph, the line begins noting that their staff, it should be, staff should be organized and help. It's just grammar.
Oh, staff is singular, and that's the
Right,
noun.
yeah,
So-
organize and help,
So the verb should be singular also, that's your point.
yeah.
Their staff do not drive buses, but organize and help to provide transportation. Since the noun is singular, you want the verbs to be singular. Okay.
Next section, 2 lines down, says the watershed. Watershed is all one word, and it should be singular, so it should be watershed.
Okay, take out the space and take out
delete
this
the
S on the
Yep.
end, okay.
And then 4 lines up from the bottom of that section, it says inform the board. The board should be stricken, and it should be committee, capital C, because they were informing the budget committee.
They were forming us, so,
Yes.
okay,
They
yes.
said they informed the board, remember? They said it wrong, but
Yeah.
Yeah, and Tri-County Cap thanked us for
For being-
meeting with the select board, so
Yeah.
not everyone knew who we were.
right.
Wasn't worth worrying. I didn't make an effort to stop them and correct them.
The next section, 2 lines down at the end of the line, it says communities within, and the word "the" should be stricken. It's not "the" Grafton.
I'm sorry, which,
It's section, whatever it is, it's Penny Baker Hospice and Home Health Care.
okay, that's what.
2 lines down, at the end of the line, the word "the," which comes after the word "within," the word "the" should be stricken.
Okay, so it should read, and in 32 different communities within Grafton and Belknap counties.
Right.
You want the stricken, got it,
Right.
okay.
And the next section, which is Voices Against Violence,
Mhm.
3 lines down, 2 lines down, at the end of the line, the word "serve" should be "serves."
Voices
Because it's
Against
not
Violence.
Voices Against Violence is a
Mhm.
single entity, not a lot of voices.
Correct.
And then that carries over to the next line, strike the word "the" and make Eastern a small e, so that serve
So
Eastern Grafton
Voices
County.
Against Violence serves, plural, Eastern Grafton County, so that is struck and
Right, and the
Eastern
Eastern
becomes
is
an
not-
adjective and is not
Right.
capitalized.
I think, I forget. Yes, one more, on the date for the next meeting, on the last page, it should be the 22nd,
Yeah.
since we just met.
Yep.
Next meeting, Tuesday, October 22nd. It says the 24th, so that needs to be corrected. Thank you, Buzz.
That's it.
Russ, anything on your part?
No?
Walter,
Thank you,
anything you want to see
Captain.
different, changed?
No,
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm not that attuned to. In fact, there was one correction I would have argued that's the right way of saying it.
Buzz, I appreciate you doing this. this doesn't play to my strengths, and knowing that you're doing it makes it that I don't have to force myself to do something that would be difficult for me, so I very much appreciate
What's
this.
that, just, at the end of the day, you wonder if anybody cares, because does anybody read the minutes?
Correct.
But I can't help myself.
No, that's good though.
I agree, so,
And I'm ambivalent about the text. I would just, the only reason I raised that is because I think this must be a nightmare for Shannon to prepare all this.
okay.
She
So,
has to, she's taking it off the table.
I gotcha. Right, so, not hearing any other requests for changes or corrections, I will now call the question to approve the minutes as amended.
I will.
All in favor? Aye. We have no one zooming, so we don't have to do roll call. It passes well, opposed, abstained, passes unanimously, 4-0. Correspondence. I have actually some correspondence, and I've made an effort to be a little more organized today to do this right. So, Christina, thank you for forwarding the note from Gail. Gail Shaw from the Grafton County Senior Citizen Service responded. I don't remember the question, but she said that during our meeting on the 8th, there was a question regarding their cost to provide services for Bristol residents. And the answer is they spent $230,929.67 is what she said. So I don't remember the question, I don't remember who asked it, but we have an answer. So she was paying attention when somebody asked the question. The other correspondence was, I got a note yesterday from Janet saying that she was traveling today, but she expected to arrive in time, that she would that she was planning to call in and Zoom with us, but she has not joined us, so I'm assuming her flight was delayed or something happened. And then the other correspondence I got was early this afternoon, which was from Sue Sedano saying something had come up at the last moment and she now would not be able to join us today. I think that's all my correspondence. Anyone else have any correspondence they want to share with the committee? All right, our next item is comments. So start with the select board member, any comments?
No, I just say kudos to the CIP committee because they're doing such a great job with that. But I think Rob covered everything else for the select board.
I think so too, so good. Walter, any comments? Not at this time.
I've got thoughts, but I'm overwhelmed by what's happening in the world and the way expenses are going. And I'm just so sad to see what's happening.
Well, I will say we're meeting next week, and that is to talk about approach and attitude and names and desires, and I think that will be an interesting conversation. So I won't press you to share all your thoughts now. Buzz, anything you wanted to?
Well, just as a member of the Capital Improvements Committee, kudos to the select board for all the work that they've done in producing this.
Mutual admiration.
There we go. All right, and I don't believe I have any more comment. I don't have any comments. So, Christina, any comments, staff comments? Okay. Our next meeting will be next Tuesday, October 29th at 6 p.m. here in this room. And that is a work session to talk about a general review of the budget and to discuss our goals and approaches and attitudes and ways of working. I will say if anyone has anything else you want added to the agenda, let me know. That's always can be arranged. I think you have to give me, ideally, let me know as soon as you know. I think you can't really change the agenda within 24 hours. Or is it even 48?
No, so you can change the agenda
But it
at
doesn't
your
get posted.
meeting even,
Okay,
but what the rules are is the meeting has to be posted. But our
okay,
consistency has been that we also post the agenda. So preference would be not to make changes after within the 24 hours notice, because if people plan on looking for something on the agenda and they look at it the day before and you make a change after and don't add something, they potentially could miss what they're looking for. So.
Right. So that's in a nutshell my attitude. We can kind of do what we want, but I wouldn't want to do anything important or controversial without letting the townspeople know about it. So I want them to just have an opportunity to see the agenda and say, hey, those folks on the budget committee are going to be talking about this. I want to come to the meeting, or I want to zoom in and watch what's happening because I care about that. If they don't know we're doing it and they do care, we've missed an opportunity to keep them engaged with us.
I will just add for the next meeting, to get you thinking about how, when you have your discussion, I want to know how you want to see your materials going forward. In the past, we've broken up the sections for you and just focused on the one section, but I want to make sure that's still how you want to see it, so we can make sure we get them all set ahead of time for you.
So for next meeting where we're going to talk about the goals, I'm not, somebody feel free to speak up if you disagree. I'm not interested in getting into individual lines. I would be happy to see a budget that just has the department name and the total for the department. What is it this year? What is it proposed department? What is it proposed select board? And totals, and even maybe subtotals for the sections, general and public safety. But in the future meetings where we're meeting with department heads, yes, we do need to see. Is that what you're asking? We do need
Yes.
to see individual lines and all that
So,
detail.
no, what I mean, so
I'm missing
sort of
something.
what I'm asking.
I misunderstood your question.
So in the past years, I would prepare, it got confusing sometimes, but we would prepare, if it was, you were talking about executive, we would only prepare 4130 executive as a PDF document for you to look specifically at instead of the whole budget. So we would break out sections for you so you could individually make notes on your own 4130 executive budget and just look at that and not have to flip through all the pages of the budget. We can still continue to do that, where we can just move the big document into each folder every week. I just didn't know how you wanted to see that.
I don't have a strong preference. I would continue to go with individual sections, but I'm open to other thoughts. Or I think in the past we've had some times where people are like, I have this 40 page, it's not 40 pages. I have this
It's 50 something
multi-page.
pages.
No, see, I'm wrong. It is 40 more.
It is
So I have this
quite a bit.
50-page budget document. The first one is easy. It's always on page 1, executive. But when you're looking for the thing that's on page 23, sometimes
And making
people
sure
have
you can
trouble
see your
getting through.
total and.
Have
yeah.
trouble getting through it. So I like the idea of separate PDFs for each department.
I like to set them up ahead and I put them in each of your folders for the meeting, because then it's done and Shannon can just grab it. So I just wanted to make sure so I could be prepared.
But
So,
I'm hearing less agree. I'm not hearing anyone
Yeah,
disagree. Let's continue that way.
okay,
Yeah.
all right. That works for me. We still have to figure out how to add your budget committee when you make changes to the columns. We will work on, but we have time to work on that. You won't need that right away. So, but we can make the changes live as well while in the meetings. So if you vote to change something, we can make those right away.
Right, okay,
So,
all right. I think we've gotten through the end of the agenda. If no one has anything else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion from Buzz, seconded by Walter to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained? Passes unanimously. We are adjourned. We're only going to be 20 minutes late to the candidate.